Y oren también por nuestro sacerdote, ¿no? Hoy siempre orando por Padre Kenney, porque yo sé cómo es la parroquia de Guadalupe, ¿no? He's praying for a priest as well, especially Father Jimmy, because I know what I think in Guadalupe is like. The parish, that is. She's wonderful. But so is the parish. The parish is wonderful as well. But thank you for inviting me to be here tonight for a brief little talk. I was here for 11 years, if somebody didn't know that, back in 2004 to 2015. I was pastor here at Our Lady of Guadalupe on the west side. Just a brief story about the Sarens. My dad was a Saren for a number of years. And when I was, I think in 7th grade, I want to introduce all of you to my sister Mary Kay, who is here as well. And her husband Tom. But my dad, there was a national convention of the Sarens in Washington, D.C. that year. And so my dad rented a motorhome and packed all of us 7 kids in that motorhome with mom and dad and our dog, Sammy, who was a Chihuahua. And so we went up northern Minnesota into Canada, and then we cut across Canada, came down through Niagara Falls into New York City to Washington, D.C. But we couldn't get into Canada because we didn't have shots for the dog. The dog needed shots, and we didn't bring the papers, and the dog was vaccinated, so we had to go to a vet and get the dog's shots in order to bring the dog into Canada with us. But we traveled around to the convention, but when we got into New York City, the horn on the motorhome got stuck. So we're driving through New York City with our horns blaring. But we reached Washington, D.C., and it was a wonderful week that we had there with the Saren conventions. And because I was only in 8th grade, they had a whole different thing for the youth. So we got to go to the National Zoo. We went on different trips and had different fiestas and parties for the youth as our parents went to all these other meetings. So the Sarens have been a part of my life for a long time. I don't think Dad continued with the Sarens, though he was involved in 50 different things, so who knows whether he did or not. But we've always known the Sarens and appreciate their work for vocations. And I always misinterpret and say, most priests, rather than a vocation, have a vacation. Porque no es solamente una vocación, pero una vacación, porque siempre estamos viajando, ¿no? Allá, para acá, para allí. We're always traveling from here to there. But a vocation is a wonderful vocation, a call in life. En que necesitamos son más vocaciones dentro de la comunidad hispana, latina, aquí en esta arquidiócesis, pero en todos los Estados Unidos, ¿no? Y el problema es que siempre es que necesitan en las casas, ¿no? Los papás, los abuelos, para hablar de esto con sus hijos, con sus nietos, o sus hijas y nietos también, porque los conventos, ¿no? Las monjas necesitan ayuda también en este momento. Pero muchas veces con la comunidad latina siempre los papás dicen, ay, no, pero ahorita está con los anglos también, porque soy de una familia de 7 hijos, ¿no? Pero hoy muchas familias solamente tienen 2, 3 hijos, hijas, y los papás quieren nietos, ¿no? Y por eso lo está empujando para pensar en una vocación de sacerdote, de monja, en vida religiosa. Entonces, los chicos también muchas veces están pensando en esto para ser un sacerdote cuando está joven, ¿no? Porque siguiendo, y siempre aquí, pero en otra parroquia también, cuando los niños ver un sacerdote, dicen, ay, Diosito, ay, es Dios, ¿no? Es Dios, pero ellos llegan a una edad donde ellos dicen, ay, no, es un sacerdote. Entonces, ellos andan atrás. Pero cuando los ojos están abiertos a los chicos, a las chicas, entonces ellos dicen, ay, no quiero ser un sacerdote, ¿no? Porque me gustan las chicas. Pero con la ayuda y apoyo de los papás, ¿no? Es algo que dice para seguir rezando por ellos, por hablando con los chicos, dice que no, usted también se puede hacer un buen esposo, pero un buen sacerdote también. Es uno de los dos se pueden hacer. Y cuando ya está un sacerdote, tiene más hijos, más madres, más hermanos y padre también que está casado, ¿no? Porque toda la comunidad quieren ser parte de la familia. And so we need to continue to pray for vocations, to encourage vocations, especially in the Latino community. But in the Anglo community today as well, with the Latino community, is families aren't as big as they used to be. I grew up with a family of 7, but my dad was a family of 11, and he had 3 brothers who were priests, a brother who was a brother, an aunt or a sister who was a nun, and so out of the 11, 5 of them were religious. Except in the changes of the church in the late 60s, early 70s, most of the priests left and married nuns, and the nuns left and married. But we stayed with one uncle who was a priest, who remained a diocesan priest here in St. Paul, Minneapolis. Then on my mom's side, she came from a family of 4, and one of her brothers was a Christian brother, and she has a sister who's a Portland nun. And so the Christian brother was a Christian brother for a number of years, but then again with the changes in the church, left and married and had a wonderful family. But my mom's sister is the only one surviving on my mom's side who is still a Portland nun down in Rochester. But when we have smaller families, it's not as encouraged in the family for somebody to have a vocation to religious life because mom and dad want grandchildren, right? So why would you encourage a son or daughter to become a priest or a nun if you really want grandchildren? But to make that choice, God is the one who is calling. And the ones who would make good husbands or good wives will also make great priests and great nuns. And so to encourage our young people to continue to think about that vocation, to think about the life that they can have, and because with giving up marriage, you do obtain many more mothers, many more brothers and sisters, many more fathers in your life who will feel free to tell you what you should do and how you should do and how you should dress and how you should behave. But the whole sense of it is your family grows bigger. And so my calling came when I was, I knew it kind of growing up, but when I was 28 years old is when I decided to look at joining the seminary after working with the Claretians in Chicago for 4 years. And so I joined the Claretians and then studied with them for 5 years before coming back to the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis to be ordained a diocesan priest. And I studied Spanish in college, high school and college, and then working in Chicago with a lot of the youth on the south side who were mainly from Mexico, trying to keep them out of gangs and so that they could grow as well and have a good life here in the U.S. And taught English as a second language and did some leadership training. And then they hired me and I directed the program for a number of years. So being ordained then a priest for the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis, I left the Claretians for many reasons, but one of them was I didn't want to spend the rest of my life speaking Spanish. And I thought if I come back to St. Paul, Minneapolis, I'd be able to do many different things, that I could do the same as the Claretians, but a little more, because the Claretians were becoming more and more Spanish-speaking as more and more immigrants were coming into the U.S. And their work was predominantly within Hispanic Latino communities. And so I started out at St. Ola for 4 years, and then went to Our Lady of Peace in South Minneapolis for 6 years, and then I was discerning what I would do next. And St. Philip's was going to be open in North Minneapolis, which is a community that works in the inner city, And so I put my name in for that parish, and at the 11th hour, one of the senior priests threw his hat in the ring, and so they gave him the parish rather than me. But then I got a phone call from Archbishop Flynn at the time, who said, well, the thing on my application, my letter, is that I worked in the inner city in Chicago, even though it was with the Latinos. In the African American community, it would be somewhat similar. So he said, so that's right, you speak Spanish. And I'm like, he said, well, Our Lady Guadalupe is open. We'd like you to go there. I was like, oh no. But as Father Jimmy had said that my understanding was the first month I was here, nobody could understand my Spanish. Because I had used it for 11 years on a daily basis, and so it was trying to get back into the practice of relearning Spanish. But the piece of that, the most important piece, is the cultural piece. It's not only the language, but it's understanding and loving the culture. You can speak Spanish all you want, but if you don't have the love of the culture in your heart, it doesn't come across. So para fijar como un sacerdote en español, estaba muy sorprendido cuando llegué la llamada del arzobispo que quisiera que yo venga por acá en Guadalupe. Estaba pensando, ay no, porque mi español no hablado por 11 años diariamente en español, entonces, ay, ¿cómo voy a hacer? Y yo empecé aquí la Semana Santa. So I started here on Holy Week. Todos los servicios eran bilingüe, all of the services were bilingual. Yo, ay, ¿qué voy a hacer? ¿Y cómo va a pasar todo eso? How am I going to do it? Pero they always said, my understanding was the first month I was here, they couldn't understand my Spanish at all. But then I kind of kicked in a little bit once I got used to speaking it a little more. But for the life of a priest, I think Papa Francisco también dice que es un pastor siempre camina con sus ovejas. No es para estar sentado en la oficina esperando para las ovejas a venir. No, el sacerdote necesita salir y estar con la gente, platicando con la gente, sentado con la gente, comiendo con la gente, y compartiendo todo, ¿no? So, the role of a priest is not just to sit in an office and wait for people. Pope Francis says, the shepherd needs to smell like the sheep. And so you need to be out with the people, out talking to the people, and be a people person. And so that is the prayer that I ask that we continue to pray, that the Lord continues. The Lord is calling. There's not a problem with God calling people to be priests. It's like the reading today that said, if someone doesn't open the door, they can't hear the call. And so we have to encourage our youth to open the door of their hearts, to listen to what the Lord is asking them to do. And so es como hoy en las lecturas, Dios siempre está llamando a la gente, los jóvenes, para escuchar una invitación para vocaciones. Pero si la puerta está cerrada a nuestros corazones, ¿cómo podemos escuchar la invitación? So, para orar también que los jóvenes abran sus corazones para escuchar la voz de Dios y para tener las fuerzas para aceptar. Porque cuando yo abrí mi corazón, yo escuché la voz de Dios, yo cerré la puerta muy rápido, ¿no? Diciendo, ay no, Dios, no, yo no quiero ser un sacerdote, no. Pero después de un tiempo, sí, yo abrí otra vez un poquito diciendo, ok, voy a tratar, y ojalá no me gusta. Los estudios y todo, pero me encantan los estudios y todo eso. Y ahorita después de 30 años, estoy aquí. So sometimes we close the door, but we might open it a little to listen. So we have to pray that our youth will open the doors of their heart, just to listen a little bit. That's what I did. But when I heard the voice of the Lord say, I want you to be a priest, I slammed that door shut and said, no, 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 I didn't hear you. But then to open it up a little more later, I'm like, okay, Lord, okay, I'll give it a try. And hopefully I won't like it. Hopefully the studies and all that will be like, oh, this isn't meant for me. But as I got more into it, I really enjoyed the studies of studying in those years in seminary, and then now 30 years later, here I am a priest. Well, now I'm a bishop. El otro como obispo que nadie quiere, ¿no? Pero algunos ya sabían por muchos años, ¿no? It's one of now being a bishop, it's another one of those calls that very few people ever want. But when it comes, it was like, oh no. But, you know, there's some people who sit there who for 30 years kept saying, you're going to be a bishop, you're going to be a bishop, you're going to be a bishop. And I could say, no, don't wish that on me, don't wish that on anybody. But it's a great honor to follow the call that God gives to us. It's a great honor to live, you know, and we want to encourage good and healthy marriages. We want to encourage good and healthy vocations to the priesthood, to religious life. And we want to encourage good and healthy single living in today's world as well. And we know that each of those vocations is difficult in today's world because we tend to be more warm than we are hot and cold, as the reading said today as well. We tend to be warm and say, oh no, we can do what we want. We can, you know, live our lives as we want to rather than listening to how God wants. And if we're hot or cold, we say yes or we say no. You know, but then we live that way, and we need, each individual then needs to be accountable for what they have chosen to do. And the Lord will understand, because He wants us not to be wishy-washy, but He wants us to make that decision. And then in that decision that we make, the grace will come, that love will come, and the strength and the wisdom will come with that as well. And so para hacer una decisión en el mundo de hoy, queremos que hay matrimonios que muy sólidos, queremos vocaciones de sacerdotal, de monja, de vida religioso que está muy concreto, que son sanos también, y queremos gente viviendo como solteros en la vida, que son sanos también. Pero como dice en la lectura de hoy, que Dios quiere que estamos diciendo si estamos frío o caliente, ¿no? O no, tibia, ¿no? Tibio, porque el mundo de hoy es tibio, ¿no? Sí puede hacer que quiere, sí puede hacer la vida como tú quieres, pero con Dios es para decir que sí o no, que queremos vivir en el temor de Jesucristo, y Dios va a darnos la gracia que necesitamos para aceptar cómo estamos viviendo en nuestra vida, pero un día necesitamos estar responsables también de las vidas que estamos viviendo. And so tonight, just thank you all for being here, and we gathered to remember to continue to pray for vocations, because it's grandparents, it's parents, it's siblings, it's parishioners. If we're praying for vocations, somebody is going to listen, somebody is going to receive that. And for, again, religious life, priesthood, marriage, good single people in today's world, but people who are following what Jesus is asking all of us to do. And that's to love God, first of all, in our lives, and to love our neighbor. And that is often where we fault in loving our neighbor in the world today. And to love our priests, to love our religious, and to encourage married couples, to love married couples as well, to continue to live faithfully with one another, and that we journey together in this world. And I know that oftentimes in the Latino community, but as I find more and more in the Anglo community, again, a lot of times we put priests on a pedestal, we put priests up here. But as a favor, invite them down. Invite them to walk with the people. Treat them with respect, but treat them as a family member as well. You know, invite them to eat, invite them to partake in the parish community in a way that they may not have done before. And so that's a very important part of our humanistic life, that we as priests and as bishops need to know that we can still walk with the people, be seen for who we are, and accepted for that as well. Como la vida sacerdotal estamos aquí para rezar por eso, pero también para a veces dentro de la cultura tenemos mucho respeto, ¿no? Para los sacerdotes, para los obispos, pero estamos poniendo ellos aquí arriba, ¿no? Pero invítanos para bajar y caminar con la gente, para comer con ustedes, para platicar con ustedes. Si ustedes platican con él, no tienen miedo de él, no tienen, ay, es un sacerdote, es un obispo, ¿no? No, para seguir invitándolos para participar en la vida. Y esto va a ayudar a ellos, pero va a ayudar a ustedes también en la parroquia, en la vida. Y una de las cosas ustedes saben, ¿no? Que es una cosa que me encanta. No es tomando, es que bailando, ¿no? Sí, que me encanta bailar. Y cuando era un sacerdote, la gente dice, es un escándalo, ¿no? Está bailando. Pero aquí estaba bailando mucho, ¿no? Se fue de aquí, ¿no? Con los alegres bailadores y todo eso, pero algunos de los fieles han dicho, cuando yo he llegado aquí, ay, ¿quién es este hombre que está bailando? Gente, ¿no? Pero es para el ser humano, ¿no? Que disfruten con la gente. So what I was saying is that one of the things I love to do in life is to the people at Guadalupe know to dance. I love dancing. And when I was ordained a priest, people said, "You can't dance." I said, "Why not? That isn't one of the vows I took, you know." I can still dance, and and I do. And when I arrived here at Guadalupe, I've often learned different cultural dances with Alegre de Bailadores, the folkloric dance team here. But people would say the first festival we had, "Who is that guy out there dancing? Look, that priest, he's dancing. That's a scandal. He shouldn't be doing that." But let me tell you, even as a bishop, I've gotten out and danced. So, como obispo, yo he bailado también. So, voy a cambiar todo, ¿no? Las actitudes y crecimiento de la gente. No, so thank you. Gracias por su presencia aquí hoy. Y sigamos orando por las vacaciones. Gracias al grupo de los Serens, que siempre es su ministerio para orar por vocaciones en la arquidiócesis, pero en todo el mundo también. So it's algo muy importante. So I thank you for your presence here tonight. We thank the Serens and their ministry of praying for vocations, working for vocations. And they're wondering, the Serens, of how we can get more vocations in the Latino community. So ellos están buscando una manera para invitar a más jóvenes hispanos latinos para pensar en esto. So, si quiere reunir con ellos, se puede juntar allá, ¿no? Y sigue ayudando los Serens, cómo pueden invitar a los jóvenes y qué materiales ellos necesitan para compartir y también para enseñarles la cultura. Esto es muy importante porque si un latino va al seminario aquí, es puro americanos y ellos enseñan como los romanos. Es difícil para los hispanos. Muchos de ustedes conocen al padre Jorge, ¿no? Él estaba aquí como un estudiante, un seminarista. Él está en Grand Valley, Nebraska. Pero era muy difícil para él allá en el seminario. Pero cuando él ha venido aquí para practicar y aprender de nosotros, era más ánimo para él, más alegre. Esto era algo muy importante en su vocación, porque estaba aquí con nosotros en Guadalupe. So I was inviting anyone here who is of Latino descent to help the Sarans who are here tonight to learn more of the culture, or to learn more of how we can work within the Latino community to invite our youth to thinking about vocations, because it is very different. And I was saying I had a teaching parish student when I was here, a seminarian who was from Grand Island, Nebraska, but he was from Mexico originally. And it's very difficult in the seminary because the seminary is almost 99% annual, and it's taught in a Roman European way, where the Latinos, it's hard for them to break into that, even though the desire might be in their heart. But to be able to move into that culture adds double the stress than with moving into the seminary. So we, working together, can figure out a way to make that transition more welcoming, more open. But I asked them too if there's a way that the Sarans, with materials or somehow to bring us all together. And it's not just with Latinos, but there's other cultures, African, there's other cultures, Hmong, there's other cultures, Vietnamese in the Twin City area. How do we make this more multicultural as well? So that's something for all of us to pray for, but to be just aware that God calls all of us to something. And we can't just narrow it to a certain group of people thinking everyone understands in that way of thinking, but to be able to stretch that and say, no, God has a greater plan than what we can imagine, and how can we be part of that plan? So thank you. Thank you, the Sarans, for providing for us tonight and for inviting me here. And may we continue to have a little more to eat, a little more to drink. Take a prayer card with you when you go home tonight. Just disfruten de la noche, ¿no? Enjoy the evening. Gracias por su presencia aquí. Gracias.